The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and this week I am joined once again by our old friend Steve Sabatke. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Am I really here?
You're here.
Is this a dream?
Is this real?
Is this real?
Why did I just see an airplane go over by?
I don't know. Thank you. Glad to be back.
We're back in the studio. Last week we were on location, which was a lot of fun. We want to thank again Tom Reichelt over at Marcus for providing us that. That was a lot of fun. But this week we have 4 movies to talk about, so I will waste no more time. Let's get into what we have on the marquee. First up, we have a film from director Olivia Wilde. It is a very controversial film. It's called Don't Worry, Darling. This is a film that stars Florence Pugh as Alice, Harry Styles as her husband Jack. Alice and Jack Chambers are a young couple living in what appears to be a seemingly perfect company town called Victory, California in the 1950s. The town has been created and financed by the mysterious company for whom Jack and all the men in this town work. The wives are all left at home to perform the same routines of cleaning, shopping, and cooking each day as the men all leave in unison, driving out to the desert in single file to work for the Victory Project. Alice's curiosity over her husband's work for the mysterious Victory Project starts to overwhelm her, and as she begins to look around, cracks begin to form in their utopian town. Her asking questions and looking past what she's supposed to see leads to tensions within the town, and when her friend commits suicide, Alice begins to openly question her existence and who the leader of this company town, Frank, played by Chris Pine, really is. Frank controls everything, including all the media which they are provided. And it's a film about young lust, men gaslighting women, seemingly is a cult film for a while in this manufactured utopia, and leaves you, the audience, questioning what is real. And this is a film that at the beginning of the year was in my most anticipated movies list.
Was it really?
Because just Olivia Wilde as a director, her first film, Booksmart, I really enjoyed. This cast is great, deep cast of really interesting, fun people.
For the most part.
Yeah, and it's a lot of people that I really adore. And for my money, after this, at the end of this movie, it left a lot to be desired for
Really?
me.
Yeah, I mean, I have a confession to make.
Yeah.
Right after I watched the movie, I was completely confused as to what was going on.
Totally fair.
I didn't have a clue. So when I got home, I did something that I normally don't do. Mm-hmm. I cheated.
Sure.
I Googled.
What was this movie all about?
Yeah, I Googled Don't Worry, Darling ending, and a whole bunch of articles popped up explaining how the movie ended.
Because you're not the first person to ask that question.
And after I read a number of them, and I read a lot, because I thought, well, that can't be right, but they all were fairly consistent. After I read all those, I said to myself, is that what this was? Mm-hmm. And it, obviously we can't say what it was, but it raised a lot of questions that I don't think were answered.
Yes.
And it kind of took away from my enjoyment of the film. I mean, I was okay with it until it got to the last act, and then it kind of completely lost me.
I was really invested.
Did you know what was going on?
Yes. Yeah, I felt like I did. But my problem was I was really invested in the beginning. I liked the beginning. I was intrigued by where it was going. Mm-hmm. I thought that the middle of the film started to fall kind of flat. It got kind of repetitious in some of the things that we were being shown. It kind of ditched a lot of the interesting character dynamics. Like I liked Nick Kroll. I liked what was Florence Pugh's friend's name. I don't have it here. She had the one friend out of the trio of her, Olivia Wilde, and then this other one who was kind of the more brash, outgoing one. I liked their dynamics. That was kind of scrapped. And I felt like if you take Florence Pugh out of this movie, it's kind of forgettable.
Yeah,
and then there's a lot of things.
She was the best part of the movie.
That were hinted at and strongly hinted at. I mentioned an airplane. A red airplane was shown to us multiple times. And I felt like that never paid off. There was a lot of things in here that never quite paid off and left me hanging going, well, but why?
Well, yeah, I mean, a couple of times during the movie, there were what seemingly felt like there was earthquakes going on.
Right? There's a rumbling, and you're like, okay.
There was no answer to that. I mean, if we could talk about the ending, we could probably spend the entire half hour.
You're not wrong.
Talking about this movie. I thought Florence Pugh was great.
I think she's great in everything, and I really felt like she was shouldering a lot of the burden in this movie.
And I thought Chris Pine was very effective as the villain.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Styles, I think the jury's still out on him as an actor.
I think he was miscast in this movie.
Yeah.
I thought that he didn't have the right chemistry. I felt like he was overwhelmed by what he needed to do, and I felt like there were a lot of other actors that could have made this role really nuanced and interesting, and he was kind of one-dimensional. And I'm curious because then I kind of, like you, I stayed away from all the drama surrounding this movie.
Well, I read about it.
But
yeah.
over the last month,
Uh-huh.
and it wasn't really until I got done with this movie that I went and read about all of the stuff with the cast and crew and whatever. And then I'm like, well, there's probably more interesting drama around the making of this movie. But I felt like there were things about Olivia Wilde as a director maybe not being there all the time and this and that. And I think the jury's still out on Harry Styles in that I don't know if he doesn't have what it takes, because this is really his first big performance, or if the director wasn't able to get it out of him, because I felt like a lot of the characters in this movie didn't know what movie they were making. Because like Nick Kroll and some of these other characters were more comedic, like satires, and some performances were really serious. I don't know that everyone was on the same page.
Well, I mean, there's one scene in the movie where Harry Styles does this very overlong
The Pinocchio dance
number. And I'm thinking, what is the point of this other than the fact that it's Harry Styles? And I'm just wondering, had Harry Styles not been in that role, had it been Shia LaBeouf, who apparently it was first offered to,
Sure.
would that have still been in the movie? I don't think so, but I'm just speculating at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt like the flesh wasn't full. The script rather wasn't really fleshed out. That it was ambitious, but I don't know. It felt like in the beginning of the movie we see all these couples getting together in this idyllic 1950s.
Yeah.
And they're having a party and they're talking smart and blah blah blah. And I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And I felt like this movie thought that it was going to be that. So, oh, we're also smart. We're talking, but then it just kind of the tires started spinning in the sand, and they didn't know where to go with it. And then we get to a third act that, I don't know, it felt like things just started falling apart.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but the original screenplay treatment for this was written by Carrie and Shane Van Dyke, who are the grandsons to Dick Van Dyke.
Right.
And after Olivia Wilde got involved, she brought in Katie Silberman, who wrote Booksmart for her, and she just
Heavily
completely
rewrote it.
gutted it and changed the ending altogether. I read a little bit about the original ending, which to me appeared to make the story much clearer. But yeah, I mean, after it was over, I'm just like, what did I just watch? I didn't have a clue.
I will say there were some things that I really enjoyed in here. I thought that there was a great eye for detail for the production values on this film, making
Yes.
it look. It was the 1950s that looked like it was somebody's idea of what the 1950s looked like in a magazine. But I thought it was great looking. I thought it had a really fun soundtrack.
Yeah, the music was great.
Soundtrack was great.
All the
It was
old
a
stuff.
beautiful looking film. There were some really wonderful performances. I agree. Chris Pine, I thought was great.
Yes, he was.
He
Very
was. He
effective.
had layers to him that I like. Ultimately, the film didn't quite rise to the level of my expectations, or I think of the level of some of the people involved in this film. But I don't think it's an out-and-out bad movie.
No, I don't think it's a bad movie. I mean, might be something. If you want to go see it, go see it. But I think it's worth seeing. But I think it's not. I think it's just about average. That's for me. That
not
was
what
it.
Not what
Yeah.
it should have been, in my opinion. But,
Yeah.
all right, let's go ahead. What did you end up giving Don't Worry, Darling?
2.5 stars. Average.
Yeah, that's exactly what I gave it, right down the middle. It is very average, which really surprised me. But if it interests you, I mean, it's in theaters and it's doing well, so you can go check that out. Let's move to what we have on our streaming spotlight this week. First, we believe we turn to Hulu for our
Peacock.
first. Peacock,
Peacock.
sorry, you're right.
Yep.
What do we have?
They all start to interchange after
do.
a while. All right, so this is Meet Cute. It's on Peacock. It's directed by Alex Lehman. And the movie opens up at a bar. You're seeing that right now, where Sheila, played by Kaley Cuoco, who played Penny in The Big Bang Theory, she approaches Gary, played by Pete Davidson, and offers to buy him a drink. And that meet-cute moment seems to be going well. However, there is something amiss. Penny seems to know what Gary's going to say, what he's going to order when they get something to eat, what they're going to talk about, what his jokes are going to be. Well, that's because Sheila is a time traveler. And she's been reliving this night over and over and over again, I guess for a year, with the help of a time machine that looks like a tanning bed, which she discovered in the back of a nail salon. I'm not making this up.
I've seen a hot tub time machine, never a tanning bed time machine.
That's right. So with this machine that looks like a tanning bed, Sheila can go back 24 hours to experience her night with Gary. Now, she's not stuck in the same 24 hours. She's choosing to repeat it.
Yes, that's the weird part.
She doesn't want to let this night go because she just feels that the next day is going to bring something horrible. Sheila tells Gary about the time traveling and that this 24-hour period is the happiest she's ever been. Of course, Gary thinks she's just joking, but she isn't. She just wants to relive this over and over again. She wants to make sure this happy moment just stays. So she keeps going on this first date or night with Gary, but things start to get boring for her. Yeah. And this is where the movie gets a little bit off the rails. There are things about Gary she doesn't like, so she decides to change him. Well, how do you do that? Well, apparently the time machine can now take somebody back more than 24 hours, I guess. Mm-hmm. I thought it was only 24 hours ago.
Yeah, we changed the rules partway through the movie.
So Sheila visits Gary in his childhood and takes some actions to create a more confident Gary. Mm-hmm. But he turns out to be kind of a jerk. So then she tries to fix that. And I guess it's at this point, I'm not going to say anything more about the plot because I either don't want to give anything else away about it or I was just confused. It
just gets messy.
And I think I'm leaning towards being confused. I think the world needs a good romantic comedy right now. I don't think this is it. It's not the first time loop romantic comedy.
It's not even the first time loop romantic comedy from an SNL star. We had Palm Springs a couple years ago with Andy Samberg, which was a much better version of a time loop Groundhog Day scenario. I didn't think there was a lot of chemistry between these two, which first off, I thought it was interesting in the beginning as we're going through and she's telling him, I'm a time traveler. And it's like, ha, 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 okay, I'll play along with you, whatever. But then I started to feel the same way that she would feel when you're telling the same story over and over again, day after day after day. I'm starting to get bored of hearing the same stories. She has to be getting bored. And then we start changing the rules of time travel. And I'm a stickler with time travel rules. And you start doing things that aren't possible. You can't do that within time travel. That irritates me. And I started to really dislike the Kaley Cuoco character. I mean, there's a lot of darkness in the movie. She's contemplating suicide.
Yeah, there are some dark themes in this.
And, and she's manipulating the situation to be perfect. She still, I mean, it happens throughout the movie. She still kills herself every day. The other version of herself, she runs her over.
Yeah, I didn't quite. Is that so that the two don't cross paths?
I guess.
Okay.
But, she's, instead of fixing herself, she wants to fix Gary, manipulates him. June, who works in the nail salon, is like, I got some trauma of my own. She's like, yeah. I got to fix Gary to make him perfect because it's him who has the issues, not me. And it just made her feel sad and desperate to me and kind of unlikable and selfish in points where she's just twisting him, eliminating his trauma. And, they talk about, your trauma kind of makes you who you are. And that's kind of the point of the movie at some point is like, no, you can't just make my life perfect because then I turn out to be a very different person. But it got messier and messier as it went along.
Well, I mean, can you even call this movie a romantic comedy? I think
no.
I laughed a couple of times. There was one time where they went to the ice cream truck and ordered a flavor called Childhood. I thought that was kind of funny. But as you mentioned, it gets into some pretty heavy themes, mental health.
Yeah.
fear of the future, controlling people's lives.
Exactly.
So it does get a little dark at times.
Like, it's not sweet, really, at any
Well,
point past the first 20 minutes, I don't think.
There's a twist towards the end that I wasn't expecting that I thought was kind
Seeing
of
that twist.
that kind of sweet.
That twist, though.
Did that break the time rules?
It did. That twist
I
broke
don't know
the
what
rules.
those are. I don't know what they are.
That irritated me more. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about this.
I mean, there were times during the movie where I really wanted to turn it off because it was getting kind of boring. But I stuck with it, and I thought it got a little better with somewhat of a payoff at the end. Nice sweet moment towards the end there.
I'll just say I watched this with my lovely wife, who is a sucker for rom-coms, and she's like, well, we're never going to watch that one again.
Oh,
okay. It's not in the rotation. And I said, I agree.
So I guess the one we're waiting for is the one that's coming up with George Clooney and Julia Roberts.
Oh, that's a winner already. Boy, you better believe that. We're gonna be first in line for that one.
But I thought Kaley Cuoco's performance was pretty good in this.
I do. I just didn't think that the chemistry between her and Pete Davidson was anything great. I don't know. That was just me.
But I think, and unfortunately the movie doesn't flesh this out, is that she apparently just thought there was something there where she wanted to just live it over and over and over again.
So weird.
I mean, we went back to his past, but not hers.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We didn't know.
All right, let's throw some scores on the screen. What did you end up giving?
I gave it 3 stars, but I may go back in time and change my mind. And break the time rules.
I gave it 2 stars. I thought it was a little less than average for a rom-com, but it's over on Peacock if that interests you. Now we turn over to, am I correct in saying this is on Netflix?
Netflix.
For a streaming film called Lou from director Anna Forster. It is an action movie starring an unexpected action star. We meet Lou, played by Alison Janney, a lonely woman who, well, here's the theme, is also contemplating suicide when we meet her. This is interrupted when her next-door neighbor, a young mother named Hannah, played by Jurnee Smollett, comes to her for help. Hannah has had her daughter, V, kidnapped. So Lou, with Hannah following her, tracks down a couple of men who are hiding out in a shack on this island during a huge storm, and she believes them to have information. And this is where our first revelation comes, that this lady isn't who she seems. She's not sweet old Alison Janney. She turns in her best Liam Neeson performance, and we find out that she is a former CIA spy who isn't here on accident. As she fights and shoots and slices anyone in her path, we find out that everyone involved in this story has a dark secret, and that family is never too far away on this island. And this movie is something else. I love Alison Janney. A friend of mine and I have a joke that she's in basically everything. I feel like we see her all the time. She's great, like one of our great character actresses. And I felt like she was too good for this movie in points.
Well, yeah, she needs a much better action movie.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. But I thought she brought her professional actress skills to a very mediocre Netflix movie. And there's some terrible dialogue in here and a reheated plot. Most of it you see in the trailer here. Most of it is set in the dark. I feel like that's to hide some production values. It takes place in a storm, and I noticed early on in this movie, this drove me nuts. There's a storm raging, and you see a wide shot. And in the wide shot, you see the rain is only hitting in a very specific part of the screen. And I was like, well, I guess they just, the water budget.
You were really paying attention.
It's something I look for, and when there's two characters staying there and there's rain around them, but then elsewhere around them, the rain is not hitting the ground. Like, well, the hose was only pointed in one direction. But I felt like the first time I saw Liam Neeson take his unexpected swing at, an older guy action flick. And I was kind of intrigued by this movie. I was intrigued. I didn't know that I needed Alison Janney in hand-to-hand combat, but I enjoyed her in this enough, I guess.
Well, I mean, I like it when they take actors that you don't think should be in these movies, and then they put them in them.
Yeah.
I mean, the most recent example I can think of is Bob Odenkirk in Nobody.
Yes, exactly.
Which is a better film.
Absolutely.
And I think Alison Janney proves that she can do this, but she needs a much better movie for this type of a role. And there's really only one scene in the movie where she gets to go full Liam Neeson in the movie, and that's when she's in the cabin with those two guys, and she fights them with a coffee pot or a coffee
Everything
can.
that's around her,
Yeah. I mean, I really wanted to see...
Kind of like a soup can she's stabbing somebody with.
Yeah, and I wanted to see more scenes like that. I mean, if you're going to put her in that role, just go all out.
Right.
You know.
And there's a lot of twists in this movie that got weird to me.
Well, I think the big reveal at the end was not as surprising as the makers of the film wanted it to be.
Right.
And I also want to know more about her role with the CIA. The movie just kind of lightly touches on that. I mean, if you're going to bring that up as a big part of her character, tell us more about that.
Right.
I don't quite understand why producers have to make action films end at a lighthouse.
Man, I thought the same thing. When we get into the lighthouse, I was like, really?
Yeah.
This is the big dramatic ending, I guess.
So they end up at a lighthouse, and I'm not a huge fan of child in peril plots, which this is.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised that this was just pretty average because of the director, Anna Forrester. I read about her. She's worked on a number of different action and science fiction and adventure films.
I think she was limited by a small Netflix budget on this.
Well, that could be, yeah. And she's worked with people like Roland Emmerich. And so, I mean, she definitely has the experience for this.
Yeah, I felt like you take Alison Janney out of this, and this is one of those really bad movies that populates red boxes in the deep depths of Netflix that you skim past. But I've seen worse films.
Yeah, I mean, I like Journey Smollett, but 2022, not real good for Journey Smollett. I mean, you got this one now in Spiderhead.
Oh, that's right, Spiderhead.
So,
what a disappointment that movie was.
Will be better for her.
Yeah, I concur with you on that. All right, what did we end up giving Lou?
2.5 stars.
Yeah, I believe I gave it 2 stars as I edge over to see. Yeah, 2 stars.
All right.
Yeah, it's all right. But I will tune in if you give me a better Alison Janney fighting people with coffee cups.
It looks like there could be a sequel to this one.
Okay, that's not what I needed. I was asking for something better.
Based on the ending. So.
All right, let's move into our final streaming spotlight for this week. What do you have for us?
All right, it's also on Netflix, a Jazzmans Blues, written and directed by Tyler Perry. It's a romantic period drama which centers around a forbidden romance between Bayou, played by Joshua Boone, and Leanne, played by Solia Pfeiffer, who first meet in the Jim Crow Deep South of Hopewell, Georgia in 1937. Bayou comes from a family that includes his protective mother and his abusive trumpet-playing stepfather who wants nothing to do with Bayou because he can't play the trumpet like his stepbrother Willie Earl does. Leanne sends a paper airplane into Bayou's window each night to signal that they should meet. When they do, it's near an oak tree where she teaches him how to read, and they discover that they belong together. But that love was not meant to be. After Bayou and Leanne plan to get married, Leanne's mother reacts by whisking the girl off to Boston with a plan to have her marry a rich white man, as both Leanne and her mother are light-skinned and they can pass for being white. So you flash forward ahead to 10 years, to 1947, and Bayou's father and brother, they've left the family to find fame and fortune as musicians in Chicago. Bayou sings at his mother's juke joint in Georgia, and Leanne returns to Hopewell as she's married to a racist white man who's campaigning to become Hopewell's new mayor and is also the brother to the community's racist sheriff. Bayou and Leanne, they reconnect, but Bayou's forced to flee to Chicago because of a lie told about him by Leanne's mother, again, stepping in to break them apart. In Chicago, Bayou gains fame as the lead singer at a theater where his brother plays in the orchestra. His brother's addicted to heroin, and he's jealous of Bayou's rise in popularity. Will Bayou and Leanne meet again? Got to watch the Jazzmans Blues to find out. Because I'm gonna stop there.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot going on in this movie. There's more story after that.
long passion project for Tyler Perry. I saw him on the Today Show earlier this week. He
Yeah.
said he'd been wanting to make this movie for 37 years.
27 years.
27 years.
Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
And I feel like he's been stretching as a filmmaker over recent years, outside of the Medea movies. I feel like he's been kind of stretching as a filmmaker and as a performer. And almost like he was building up muscles to make this movie, because I think this is his most ambitious project that he's done. I haven't always been a fan of his films or maybe his performances in other films. And I enjoyed a lot of this movie. I think Joshua
did too.
Boone was really good as Bobby.
Yes.
I really enjoyed him.
He's a great singer, too.
Yes. I like the idea of this jazz man who can't play an instrument. That was kind of interesting. The dynamic, the Cain and Abel dynamic between he and his brother Willie Earl was interesting. There's a lot of really uncomfortable racism in this movie, as there should be. Leanne's mother is not what I was expecting her to be at the beginning of the movie. She turned into something that I did not expect. It's interesting. I was surprised that it just kind of brushed past the idea of Leanne and her mother passing as white in that time. We saw a movie last year, Passing. Was that you and I that
but
talked about it?
especially now that they were back in Georgia.
Yeah.
I thought that seemed a little thin.
I agree. When she came back and I'm like, everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of odd to me, but I enjoyed a lot about this movie. I did feel like I'd seen a lot of this movie in other forms, and we also have like Till coming out soon, hits on some familiar themes from that as well, but.
Well, this is an old-fashioned romantic period melodrama,
Yeah.
which I absolutely love if they're done right. Yeah, the movie does drag a little bit at times, but I love the cast. They're all newcomers.
Yeah.
I love, at least to me, they were newcomers. Yeah. I love the look of the film, very authentic looking, love the music. My biggest fear is that this movie is going to get lost in the late in the year shuffle of all these great or supposedly great movies that are going to be coming out now.
Yeah.
And it'll get lost. I don't think Netflix has been spending a heck of a lot of money and time promoting this film.
No, they've been tightening their belt all around. I think like most of the streaming platforms have recently. Surprising, because it seems like Tyler Perry has the power to get any movie made in theaters. I mean, he's put a dozen Medea movies out there for people to see and make a ton of money. So I was surprised that this was Netflix only. But yeah, I enjoyed this one, and I kind of look forward to seeing what Joshua Boone does from here going forward.
Yeah, I am too. Really looking forward to it.
All right, a Jazzmans Blues. What did you end up giving it?
I gave it 4 stars. I mean,
wow,
I really hope Tyler Perry makes more movies like this.
I do too. I hope he pushes in this direction as opposed to the directions he's gone in the past. What did I give it? I give it 3 stars. 3 stars. Enjoyable. The best movie I saw on the week.
Okay.
There's something. Maybe I'm just a little scarred from all the previous movies that we saw. But that's on Netflix. We both recommend go to check that out. Let's quickly look ahead, though, what is coming soon, the weekend of October 7th. We have a few films. The first one, in theaters, we have Amsterdam, David O. Russell's new crime comedy about 3 friends in the 1930s who witness a murder, they're framed for it, and they uncover a crazy plot. Stars Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Rock. It looks like a good time. David O. Russell, he's a great filmmaker. We also have in theaters Lyle Crocodile, based on a children's book about a crocodile living in New York City, starring Javier Bardem, Constance Wu, and the voice of Shawn Mendes, for those of you who enjoy that. Over on Netflix, we have Mr. Harrigan's Phone, a horror film about a Mr. Harrigan who dies and is buried with his phone. But when the lonely teen who helped care for him at the end of his life sends that phone a text, he's shocked to get a response from the grave. Mr. Harrigan, played by Donald Sutherland. That's over on Netflix. Also, we have streaming Luckiest Girl Alive, a dark thriller featuring Mila Kunis as a woman who has her whole life going perfectly, but when she tells her story of a traumatic incident from her past to a filmmaker, her past might come back to haunt her. This is over on Netflix as well. Also stars Jennifer Beals. I just like when she's in movies. And then lastly, over on Hulu, there is a new Hellraiser movie, a new take on the old classic Hellraiser, Pinhead and Friends. Never been a fan.
Count me in.
Yeah, count you in, I'm sure. Real quick, we want to thank our sponsor, Marcus Theaters, The Palace here in Sun Prairie. Thank you again for sponsoring this program and for inviting us into to your place to sit in some dream loungers and watch movies. Next week, I'm going to be talking about movies such as Bros, Smile, Blonde, Rob Zombie's The Munsters, maybe Hocus Pocus 2. Who knows? But Dan Presser will be here to talk about all of those along with me. Steve, once again, appreciate you coming in.
Hey, thank you. Anytime.
Oh, it's a wonderful time. All right, let's get out of here. Until next week, I'm Jamison.
And I'm Steve.
Thanks for watching.